day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Point Counterpoint with Pastor Gary and Charlie, and this is episode 24. And I'd like to talk to you folks. Gary and I would like to talk to you about Afghanistan. Some things that probably don't know. Some things that if you had known 20 years ago, you might have objected to your politicians or your president becoming involved in that horrendous mess of a country.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
All right. So let's start. After 9/11, and our little sign over here, and then Gary is turning so we can see Gary. There we go. So we have a split screen. So, excuse me. Let's go back after 9/11, and they were chasing Osama bin Laden, which is kind of interesting. The first time I ever heard Osama bin Laden's name was when Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North mentioned it during the Iran-Contra hearings, which were years before. That was during the Nixon administration,
Right.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
So for you folks that weren't taught any history at all in school, or you're being taught this counterculture history now, this critical race theory or the 1619 project or whatever the heck that is. For those of you who missed out on real history, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North was working, I think, for the National Security Council. I'm not sure exactly, but he was working for the president, and he was engaged in supplying weapons to South America and making some type of a deal with the Middle East and Latin America that your anti-American Congress was against. So he was interviewed, and they asked him what right he had to spend government money, $50,000, $60,000, on a security system for his home. And he mentioned that there was a fatwa out on him to kill him. And, of course, they didn't even know what that was at that time.
Right.
And they said, well, from who? And he said, from Osama bin Laden. And if you don't know this, Osama bin Laden's family, they're all Saudi Arabians. And the bin Laden family are multi-billionaires. So Osama bin Laden was funded by his family from Saudi Arabia with billions of dollars. And he was in Afghanistan. And they arranged for 9/11. Pretty much paid to have most of the hijackers on 9/11 were Saudis. And he pretty much Osama bin Laden paid to have them trained as pilots. They came to the United States and learned how to fly these planes. Keep this in mind. They didn't have to learn how to land them.
No.
They just had to learn how to take them off and then kill the flight crew. Right? So that's what they did. And only one plane load of passengers resisted. Only one plane load of passengers resisted. And that plane crashed with all aboard perishing in Schwenksville, Pennsylvania. And I've been there.
Shanksville, right?
Shanksville, yeah. I've been there. I was there before they made the mistake of building a memorial.
Oh, they built a memorial there.
They built a building there, a memorial building. I was there at 6 o'clock in the morning. My partner and I were deputy sheriffs, and we were out there picking up a prisoner, and we got up at 6 o'clock in the morning and drove out to the site. And, of course, it's a national memorial.
Right.
We drove out to the site, and it was breathtaking. It was absolutely breathtaking and emotional. At that point, it was a huge field. And the gathering place for the memorial was on one side of the field, but the plane had landed on the other side of the field. and there's really nothing to see as far as the plane.
Right.
Because the plane hit the ground and it disintegrated, and then they came and they took all of the parts and found all the people, and most of the people were just red clay. I mean, it was just a mess. They excavated the plane out of there, so that plane was gone. The people were gone. So it was the memorial that was the interesting thing. The memorial that gave you this sense of peace.
Yeah.
And the memorial was out in the middle of this field, and people came to the memorial and left memorabilia. And it's out in the middle of a field, so there's nobody stealing anything, and there's no graffiti, and there was no guards, there were no watchmen, there were no National Park Service people there. It was just me, my partner, God, and the souls of those people on that plane. And it was really a very moving morning.
Yeah.
There were benches there. There were challenge coins there. There were motorcycle groups had come, and there were T-shirts there. There's memorabilia from the families of the people who passed away in that airplane were there. It was really a moving morning for me. The other places, yes, 9/11 is a moving memorial to me. A very good friend of mine, an FBI agent, his sister passed in building number 1. And he never got anything back, nothing, not even a pocketbook. She's just gone.
Yeah.
Went to work that morning and she's gone. And I guess it's apropos we're talking about this because September 11th
20 years.
is coming up on this. I called him the other day. We've been friends since September 11th. And I spoke to him on September 11th because I arranged a convoy to New York City, and we fed 1,000 FBI agents during this.
Oh, wow.
I arranged a convoy from my church, Central United Methodist Church. A lady by the name of Sharon Schiffer, who still goes to the church, and as a matter of fact, they're doing a 20-year memorial this coming Sunday, I believe, at the church. And we did all the organizing from the church hall. We enlisted Atlantic City jitneys, small buses. We took a convoy of jitneys. Ocean City Ice Company gave us a truck loaded with ice. Hamilton Township mayor supplied a police escort go to New York because it was closed.
Yeah.
Oh, New York was closed, folks. The Garden State Parkway from Atlantic City to New York was closed. The tunnels and the bridges to New York were closed.
Yeah.
You needed a police escort just to get on the parkway. You needed a police escort just to get off of the parkway. It's the only time I ever rode the parkway, didn't have to pay a toll. But we went up the parkway with a police escort with all the food. A lot of the food was donated from a small market on the road in Northfield, New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
Chicken. And the casinos, several casino presidents went to my church. And they just said, whatever you need, we'll give you. You're going up to New York City to feed the FBI, who are, when the planes hit the World Trade Center, it was a terrorist event. That is a federal crime. So the Federal Bureau of Investigation investigates federal crimes. So the World Trade Center location became a federal crime scene.
Oh, okay.
They took over the USS Intrepid, which is a retired aircraft carrier, which is docked on the Hudson. They took over the Intrepid as the location where they were going to take forensic evidence.
Oh, okay.
Now, the FBI building in New York City is behind the Millennium Hilton. So if you picture, the World Trade Center was only one of 7 buildings that were damaged.
Right.
Most people don't realize that. The World Trade Center, there were 2 buildings, building number 1, building number 2, but then there was the customs house, and the other, that's 2, that's 3 buildings, and then the other buildings in the complex, there's 7 buildings, and they were all destroyed, right? You see some pictures of a building that's blackened, that's on an angle. That was the U.S. Customs House. And then all of the buildings surrounding the World Trade Center complex were pretty much destroyed. The Millennium Hilton, the entire facade of the Millennium Hilton was blown out. There was one building that was moved 20%, 20 degrees off its foundation. A New York City skyscraper that was moved 20 degrees off its foundation. That breaks everything.
Wow.
The electric lines, the telephone lines, the gas lines, the steam lines, the water lines. See, it breaks everything.
It's amazing because they would actually move the building
Yes.
20 degrees.
And it's still 20 degrees off its foundation today.
Wow.
And it's back in operation. But it sits catawampus to its foundation.
Wow.
And the entire basement flooded.
Wow.
Of all those buildings. Now, see, you had the World Trade Center complex, and then on this side over here, you had the Millennium Hilton. That was blown out completely. And then behind the Millennium Hilton, on the next block, was the Federal Building. Well, the Federal Building is where the FBI was. Well, the Federal Building was unusable. It was filled with, first the basement was filled with water.
Okay.
Right, the subway systems, the levels underneath the World Trade Center and all of the buildings around it, the bulkheads were broken and the Hudson River flooded in and flooded it all under there. So if there were people under there in any subway cars or anything, when that happened, they didn't burn to death, they drowned.
They drown.
So that was all shut down. Well, everybody, back in those days, where did everybody keep their emergency equipment, Gary?
In the basement?
Where do you think all the telephone switching equipment was?
In the basement.
Correct, Demundo. So all of the emergency management equipment, all of the gas masks, all the water, all the telephone switching stuff, where do you think all of the mobile telephone equipment for Manhattan was? In the World Trade Center.
Okay.
There was no phone service.
Right.
So the FBI building was gone. I was in it. It was smoke-filled, and it was empty. The FBI had to move. They went to 34th and West Side Highway to a parking garage. And that was FBI headquarters.
Oh, wow.
And they surrounded the garage with chain link fence and barbed wire. So we went up the Parkway. We had to be very careful. Now, you have to understand, nobody in the country, including the President of the United States, and particularly our numerous security agencies and intelligence agencies, had a clue of what was going on. Nothing. So here these 2 planes hit these 2 buildings. These 2 buildings go down. Another plane hits the Pentagon. Another plane crashes in Pennsylvania. And is that just the beginning of the assault from within? We didn't know, but we thought it was possible. So are there going to be more attacks? We assumed there were. It was a frightening time.
Oh, yeah.
It was a frightening time. I mean, you know, these people in flyover country, people in Ohio and Arizona, and there's no thought of that.
Right.
But now we're on the East Coast where there's millions and millions of people and a complex infrastructure, and it's being attacked. Do you know why they stole those specific airplanes?
No.
They stole those specific airplanes because of the volume of fuel they carried.
Oh.
They-
What kind of airplane? It was a
I
seven.
think it was a 767, but I don't recall. I made a video about it. I don't recall at this point what model airplane it was.
But they did it because of the amount of fuel.
It was a transcontinental airplane. New York to California nonstop. 50, 60, 70,000 gallons of jet fuel. Took off from the airport, circled around, drove into the building, and all of that fuel caught on fire. That fuel melted the girders. They say, well, if they had been surrounded with asbestos instead of the new type of fire prevention foam? I don't know. That's a question, and nobody's built a sample building and set it on fire with 50,000 gallons of diesel fuel,
Right.
or with jet fuel. But that's what happened. The fire melted the girders, and the top floors started coming down, and then the weight just collapsed the entire building.
Yeah.
And I have pictures of people jumping off of the roof of
was
that
so
building.
sad, yeah.
It was
So-
either jump off the roof and die immediately after you fall all the way down alive, or that you get burned to death. It was a choice that
Yeah.
people made then. Either get burned to death. And the other problem was, I believe all the emergency exits were internal, not external. So the building was on fire inside. The planes blew up inside.
Well, the exits were on the first floor.
Well, the exits were on the first floor, but the people above where the planes hit couldn't get down because all of the fire towers were internal. I believe that was the case.
Yeah.
Anyway, you couldn't get on the Garden State Parkway without police. And the FBI...
Now, how long was that? I mean, was it like a week after?
it was a couple weeks.
It was a couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah, that was a couple weeks. So we went up, I think, 4 days after 9/11 to feed the FBI. I contacted this particular officer. He was the head of the communications for the FBI in New York City. And it was kind of interesting how I got a hold of him. As a retired police officer, I know that when these things happen, the last person that gets taken care of is your local cop.
Right.
I don't know how many times in Philadelphia when we had emergencies or we had situations where we would be out there at all hours of the day and night. You got stale bologna sandwiches. You got apples, bananas with black spots on them.
Yeah.
You got coffee that was so hot it curdled the cream that you put in them. You got stale donuts. It was just bleh. And I knew that there was some police agency in New York City that was being treated this way. So I started to make some phone calls. Well, there was no phone service in Lower Manhattan. The World Trade Center had all of the switching facilities.
Yeah.
I finally got a hold of either the PBA, the Police Benevolent Association, or the FOP in Albany, New York. And they said, we have a representative in New York City, and he has a phone with our area code that is working. So I called the FOP or PBA rep on the phone, and I told him we wanted to come to New York City. This is Casino City, Atlantic City, and many of the casino presidents had told me you can have anything you want. The businesses in the area were giving us all the food we wanted. We had all the transportation we needed. Now I had to coordinate with somebody. So this guy from the FOP said, listen, the New York State Police are using the Jacob Javits Center. And they're staying in the Jacob Javits Center, and they have catering, and they have white sheets. The New York State Police, they're good. The fire department, well, they have their firehouses.
Right.
And plus, when they're not working and they're not trying to find the bodies of their fellow officers at the World Trade Center, they can go home. The police department is the same way. They have police stations. They can go to the firehouse or they can go home. He said the agency that's really up against it is the FBI. He said their headquarters is unusable. They brought in 1,000 FBI agents from all over the country to help with the investigation. And they don't have any, and they're using a parking garage as an office. So he gave me the name of a friend who's now my friend for 20 years. He was in charge of communications for the FBI in New York. He says, yeah, he said, our people don't even have a place to stay.
Wow.
So we arranged, and the food had to be guarded by police at all times. They were afraid of sabotage. The parkways, the entrances to the tunnels and the bridges were closed and guarded by trash trucks and cement trucks.
Wow.
Because they were afraid that terrorists were going to drive bombs into the tunnels and onto the bridges and blow them up too. New York City, Lower Manhattan was shut down. So when we went, we had to take ice, we had to take water, we had to take food and a way to heat the food. It had to be guarded by police. We stopped at a rest stop for people to go to the bathroom on the Garden State Parkway, and the police guarded the food trucks.
Wow.
Got to the end of the parkway going into the Lincoln Tunnel. They had to move the concrete truck so we can get through. Got to the Lincoln Tunnel. State police, New York police, Port Authority police are there. We have a police escort. Got the FBI meeting us on the other side. They opened it up, moved the trucks. We went underneath the tunnel alone. Not another car, not another vehicle, not another car, not another vehicle with us from Atlantic City to Manhattan.
Wow.
Got come out of the tunnel. The tunnel's all blocked off. We had to stop. They moved the trucks. There were 2 FBI cars, sedans, sitting there. I met with this gentleman. His name's Bob Kobus, by the way. I met with Bob for the first time. I said, can I have your business card? Here's my business card. Can I have your business card? He said, I don't have any left. He said, I've been giving them to all the EMT people in the hospitals. I'm looking for my sister. She was in building number 1.
Wow.
So, oh, God. And you're still working? He said, yeah, I'm working. He said, we're working.
Yeah.
So we followed the 2 cars. They took us up to the FBI headquarters.
The parking garage.
The parking garage. Yeah. And we set up a food table, and we fed 1,000 officers.
Good.
Now, then he came to me. He says, I want you to put 10 meals. We had these little jitney buses, all right? They hold 13 passengers. That's what we took everybody up with. He said, I want you to put 10 meals in the little bus, and don't tell anybody. We have to go someplace. Okay. So now the only reason we were able to do this is because I was a police officer.
Okay.
When I talked to him on the phone, he checked me out. If a civilian had called and said, we want to come and feed the FBI, he would have said no, because he doesn't know who he's talking to.
Right.
And we were afraid of terrorism. I mean, they could have come up and poisoned 1,000 FBI agents. We don't know.
Yeah.
So we put 10 meals in a little bus, and we started driving, and he gave us directions. I said, where are we going, Bob? He said, we have a field office at the World Trade Center inside the perimeter, and we don't tell anybody where it is because we're afraid of what's happening.
Right.
This is our field office. This is where we're doing the forensics, gathering all the forensic evidence to take it up to the Intrepid. And so we don't tell anybody where this is. You can't tell anybody where this is. So you got it. So we get down there. There's a trailer. No markings on it. It doesn't have a big sign on it that says FBI. There's a trailer sitting there with its own generator. Because electricity
was still out.
It was still out. There was no. It was hot. It was September, but it was hot and sticky and muggy, humid. Not only was it hot, sticky, muggy, and humid, but do you remember seeing the videos of all of that dust?
Yes.
Well, all of that dust
was still in the air.
It's on the ground.
Oh, okay.
And now it's hot and humid and it's rainy. It's like mud.
Yeah.
The streets of New York, in Lower Manhattan, were just filled with the debris mud from all of those buildings.
Yeah.
And they had street cleaning machines going up and down, trying to make the streets passable. So we go into this trailer, and there's about 10 FBI agents in the trailer. And one of them is a female FBI agent. And we had a lady with us from the local TV station down there. Her name was Michelle Dawn Mooney. And I don't know why I remember that name. Sharon Schiffer from Northfield, from the Central United Methodist Church, sent me a message asking me, did I remember the name of the TV reporter that was with us? I said, gee, Sharon, that's 20 years ago. Michelle Dawn Mooney. I don't know where it came from, but boom, there it was. I don't know where she is today. I don't know who she's working for, if she's working or not. I guess they would like to have her at the service this coming weekend.
Oh, okay.
So I guess the 11th is Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we went into this trailer, and this female FBI agent, she turned, and we're putting the meals out in front of them, the packaged chicken dinners for everybody. And she stood up, and she gave Michelle a hug, and she started to cry. And she said, we've been here for 4 days, and she said, all I've had is water and stuff out of machines. You know, put your money in the machine, and you get a candy bar or a bag of chips. She said, that's what we've been eating for 4 days. She said, we thought, she's crying, hugging Michelle. She said, we thought everybody had forgotten about us.
Wow.
And we said, no, we didn't forget about you. We're up here, you know, so we fed them all. We went down. Bob took us down, showed us. It was at that point, the media, of course, the media tries to hype everything. If there's blood at noon, there's got to be film at 11.
Right.
The media was hyping the rescue effort. The rescue effort. See all the people and the machines at the rescue effort, looking for survivors. Ladies and gentlemen, I was there. There were no survivors. It was never a rescue effort.
Yeah.
It was moving debris. That's all it was. Debris that they were moving with buckets, handheld buckets. There's no survivor when the piles of debris are 3-4 stories tall, and the debris is in the form of stuff you can pick up with a bucket. So there were no survivors.
Right.
The following week, and it was still closed. Everything was closed. They just didn't open up. I mean, this was a major terrorist attack, and we're expecting more. The following week, we came up and we fed them again. This time, they put us down at Battery Park.
Oh, okay.
And there were ferry boats and those boats that shuttle people from New Jersey to New York in the morning. You know, they go to work back and forth. Right down there at Battery Park. And this one was really bad. This one was emotionally bad. Because they set us up to feed all the FBI agents and everybody and anybody else, cops, everybody. We fed about 1,000 people both times.
Right.
In Battery Park, we were set up right next to where they had set up a temporary memorial for the police and firemen who died when the buildings came down. And they had photographs of the guys, and the families were coming in, leaving flowers, praying, and crying, wives and children crying. And there were the pictures of their police and fire husbands on the wall. I mean, right then, I mean, they all knew. I mean, they knew. And this was like 8 days afterwards.
Yeah.
We were at Battery Park, and they put a probe down into the wreckage. And the fire was still going on in the wreckage, and we were told that the temperature was 1,200 degrees. So there were no survivors.
No, that's incinerator.
But seeing all of those people come in, I have pictures of the memorial, the tent, with all the pictures of the deceased police and fire. Now and when Bob Kobus, my friend from the FBI, when he retired a couple of years ago, my son and I and Bob went to the memorial. It's the first time since 9/11 the three of us had gone. We went to the memorial, went to the location where Bob's sister's name is. Back in after 9/11, I attended Bob's sister's memorial service in Brooklyn. He invited me. I went. We have been fast friends for 20 years.
Wow.
The other day, he sent me a picture, tunnels to towers. He's got his T-shirt with his sister's picture, and every year he rides the bicycle to the towers from New Jersey. So
no, that tunnels to towers is a great organization.
Yes, it is. So, folks, what I can tell you, Gary, what I can tell you about 9/11, the most important thing about 9/11, evil exists.
Mm-hmm.
Never forget.
Never forget. Hard to believe it's been 20 years.
Evil exists today. There's a God, there's evil.
Mm-hmm.
9/11 is an example of evil men
That's right.
at work.
That's right.
It's also an example of brave, dedicated heroes.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
So
Amen.
we're finished this segment.
Mm-hmm.
I started it on something else.
Well,
But-
it does tie into Afghanistan.
Well,
though.
it does tie into Afghanistan.
So we'll have to hit that next time.
And Afghanistan is right back where they were prior to 9/11.
Right.
Isn't that sad?
And 20 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Point Counterpoint with Gary and Charlie on WHRFM.com, World Hype Radio, TV, computer. If you'd like to donate, go to WHRFM.com and hit that blue button and send us some money. We can use it to pay the rent.
You got that.
We can use it to pay the rent. So, folks, say a prayer for all of the friends that passed on 9/11. Take a minute on Saturday to remember. God bless.